Welcome to Born to Win. I'm Brian Proctor, and each Monday I share a short message designed to help you start your week with focus, clarity, and intention. These episodes are built around timeless principles that I learned from my father, Bob Proctor. And when understood and applied, these principles can change the direction of your life. If this podcast has been meaningful to you, I would appreciate it if you would rate it, follow it, and share it with someone who could benefit from these ideas. It helps this message reach people who are ready to hear it. Every episode is designed to remind you that success isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. You were born to win, and when you live in harmony with the laws of life, you begin to experience that truth in every area. Today's episode is titled The Story You're Living Inside of. Because whether you realize it or not, every one of us is living inside a story. And that story is shaping the direction of your entire life. So take a deep breath, open your mind, and let's get started. It's easy to assume that life is determined by circumstances. Circumstances like where you were born, the opportunities you received, the economy. Maybe your education, your luck. But here's the thing. Your life is not controlled by your conditions. Your life is controlled by your conditioning. Think about that for a moment. Not your conditions, your conditioning. When you pay attention and begin to recognize the beliefs that you've accepted as facts, the ideas you absorbed before you could reason and choose your thoughts, you will start to understand the stories that have been shaping your life. Conclusions about who you are and your place in the world. Over time, these ideas formed something my father, Bob Proctor, taught extensively about, a paradigm. A paradigm, it's a mental program. It is stored in the subconscious mind that controls our behavior. And all of our behavior, it's habitual. Most of the decisions you make in life aren't conscious decisions at all. They're responses derived from our paradigms. And inside every paradigm is a story, an internal narrative that once recognized can be transformed to create new possibilities. You may not notice it, but there's a constant internal conversation running in your mind. A quiet narrator interpreting everything you experience. When something goes wrong, it says, "See, I knew this wouldn't happen." When an opportunity appears, it may cause you to dismiss it. When you succeed, it might say, "You just got lucky." That voice is the story you've been rehearsing for years. And if you're not careful, it becomes the script of your life, and it defines your life. My father often explained this using what many people know as the stick person diagram. If you studied Bob Proctor's teaching, you've seen it. There is a full circle that represents the mind. The top half of the circle is the conscious mind, the thinking mind. That's where ideas are either accepted or rejected. But the bottom half of the circle, below that line, is the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is not where you reason or analyze. In fact, the subconscious never rejects. It only accepts the ideas you repeatedly impress from your conscious mind. And once a new idea is impressed on your subconscious through consistent repetition, backed by emotion, you are altering your story. You are weakening the old paradigm by consciously replacing it with new ideas about who you are and what you're capable of. You can rewrite your future. And when these new ideas become part of your paradigm, your behavior, it'll change. And that will alter your results. So if you're ready to change your story, consider practical steps like awareness, questioning old beliefs, and replacing them with empowering narratives. These tools, they enable you to rewrite your internal story and shape your life intentionally. None of us consciously wrote our original story. It was written through conditioning. As children, we were highly impressionable. Psychologists often explain that young children spend much of their early years in slower brainwave states, which makes the mind extremely receptive to suggestion. Children absorb ideas without questioning them. So when they hear, "Be careful," "Money is hard to earn," or "You should play it safe," or "People like us don't do things like that," those ideas, they sink deep into the subconscious mind. Over time, they become conclusions. And those conclusions become the internal story. You might grow up believing you're not creative, or that you're not good with money, or that success is for someone else. Remember, many of the beliefs you hold are not facts, but rather someone else's ideas that you've accepted as fact. Learning to distinguish between what is true and what is an old and tired belief allows you to challenge and reframe your internal narrative. The truth is, we are spiritual beings with intellects residing in physical bodies. The core of our being is perfect and requires no modification. It is all-knowing and requires no improvement, but rather awareness. Imperfections come from faulty programming rather than our true nature. What's fascinating is that modern neuroscience is now validating much of what my father taught decades ago. Researchers studying the brain have discovered that the brain constantly filters reality through internal expectations. Psychologists call this predictive processing. Your brain predicts what it expects to see based on past experiences and beliefs. So instead of objectively observing reality, your brain filters information through your internal narrative. If you believe opportunities are scarce, well, your brain will overlook possibilities that are all around you. If you believe you are capable and resourceful, your brain begins noticing opportunities everywhere. Another well-known psychological concept called confirmation bias supports this idea. Your mind searches for evidence that confirms the story you already believe. If your internal narrative says things never work out for me, your mind, it'll find proof. But if your narrative says, I find solutions, your brain begins noticing solutions. Your internal story directs your attention, and where attention goes, action follows. Your perception of your world is unique to you. It is your biased and limited interpretation. When you step back and widen your view, your perspective can change. You're broadening your thinking. Perspective is powerful because you are stepping outside your limited thinking. Two people can face the same situation and interpret it completely differently. One person sees failure, another sees feedback. One person sees rejection, another sees redirection. What determines the difference? Well, it's a lot of things, but what it all points to is the story they're living inside of. If your story is that you are a victim, then every challenge will reinforce that belief. But if your story says, I am responsible for the direction my life is going in, then every challenge becomes an opportunity to do better. Now, consider for a moment that there is no one you will spend more time with than yourself. I'm talking specifically about the voice in your head. We can call it your self-talk. You speak to yourself more than anyone else in your life. Thousands of thoughts pass through your mind every day. Many of those thoughts reinforce the story you believe about yourself, strengthening the beliefs you have accepted as your boundaries. Every day you are reinforcing your paradigms. But when you do the work to shift your self-talk to something that supports growth, like intentionally saying, I'm learning, or I can figure this out, you begin planting new ideas in the subconscious mind, replacing negative thoughts with empowering ones by using repetition and genuine emotion. Those supportive ideas, they'll gradually take root. As they are reinforced, they begin to replace the old narrative. What once felt unfamiliar starts to feel natural, and a new story begins to form. That is how paradigms change. Now, if you're paying attention, there will likely be a turning point in your life, a moment when you begin questioning the story you've been telling yourself and others about who you are. Maybe it's after a setback or an emotional impact. Maybe it's after encountering a powerful idea. Or perhaps you wake up one day and think, I am sick of me. I am sick of living this way. For my father, that turning point came when he began studying Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. The ideas he began learning got him thinking in a bigger way. It got him imagining a life different from the one he had been living. Essentially, that book was expanding his awareness and his understanding. He began to realize something profound. The life he had been living was not the result of his true potential. It was the result of the story he believed about himself. And if that story created his results, well, then a new story could create different results. That realization sent him on a 60-year journey of personal development. His mission became to understand who he was and to help others understand who they are and what it means to live to their potential. What my father discovered is that he was the author of his life, and he began to take responsibility for that. And here's the thing, like my father, you are not stuck with a story you were given. You are the author of the next chapter, and you can begin rewriting that now. But rewriting your story, it begins with awareness. You must first recognize the narrative that's been running automatically. Ask yourself, what do I believe about success? What do I believe about money? What do I believe about my capabilities? What do I believe about what's possible for my life? Really think about those questions. Take a pen and a paper and write out your answers. Now consider what you wrote. Many of those beliefs that you wrote out were accepted years ago without question. Now accept the idea that they can be rewritten. Changing the story you're living inside of is not about pretending. It's about intentionally choosing new ideas. My father taught several tools for doing this. One of them was writing a goal that stretches your self-image. When you write down a goal and read it every day, you introduce a new idea to the subconscious mind. Another powerful tool? Repetition. Reading your goal, visualizing the result, listening to empowering messages. Every repetition strengthens the new narrative. Eventually, the paradigm begins to shift. And when the paradigm shifts, behavior naturally changes. Before we wrap up today, I want to give you a Born to Win practice for this week. This exercise, it's simple, but it can be incredibly powerful. For the next 7 days, begin noticing the story you're telling yourself. Pay attention to the quiet commentary in your mind. When something doesn't go your way, listen to what your inner voice says. For example, does it say, "This always happens to me"? Don't judge it. Just notice it. Now here's the second step. Each time you catch that old story, pause and intentionally replace it with a new narrative. Instead of "this always happens to me," say, "There is a solution here, and I am finding it." Repeat the new story with emotion. Write it down, read it in the morning, read it at night. Because when the subconscious mind accepts the new story, your behavior begins to align with it. Do this for 7 days. And you may begin noticing something fascinating. Your perspective starts to widen and shift. You begin seeing possibilities you didn't notice before. That's the power of changing the story that you've been living inside of. My father reminded us that we become what we think about. I want to add to that. You become the story you consistently tell yourself. The story of limitation creates a limited life. The story of growth creates an expanding life. The story of possibility opens doors that were hidden before. So let me ask you, what story are you living inside of? And more importantly, is it the story you want to keep telling? Because the moment you decide and commit to the work to change that narrative, oh baby, your life begins to change with it. Thank you for joining me today on Born to Win. If this message resonated with you, please share it with someone who could use a reminder of their own inner greatness. It also helps me to reach more people if you rate and follow this podcast. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Brian Proctor Official. And remember, success isn't about luck or timing. It's about alignment. You were designed for success, built for expansion, and born to win. I'll see you next Monday. Until then, think big, trust yourself, and keep growing.